I want to make a traveling blacksmith forge, but for live action roleplay. As in, it doesn't actually serve a function, it's a prop, but it really adds to the immersion of what's going on. Now, I think this is a craft that a lot of my community can use, whether you're a blacksmith needing a forge, or you're just needing glowing coals for your fire pit, or maybe something awesome for your set for TikTok, or maybe you just need something really cool for Halloween. That's how I found this original idea, and I'm adapting it to fit what I need. So I think this is going to be just a lot of fun. Come along for the ride and let's see what we can come up with. Now, this video is going to cover two parts to this craft because I'm making a forge stand to go with the glowing coals. So in order to know what order you need to follow along with, I've marked which chapter, so to speak, of which part of the craft that I'm covering. I'm first going to cover the making of the hot coals, those glowing, flickering embers. But if you need to know what size platform you need first, maybe you're using scrap wood or you have a very specific size that you need to make first, skip to that part later and then come back and make this part, because this is very adaptable to whatever size platform that you need if you're making a forge as well. Now for this first part, for the hot coals, these are the materials that I'll be using. A board, something to use as a platform. In this case, I'm using some upcycled cardboard. You could also use poster board, maybe a light piece of wood, some plexiglass, whatever you have handy. Aluminum foil, empty plastic bottles, or in this case, I'm using an upcycled plastic lid that I had from leftovers. So you will also need a string of lights. I'm using orange lights. They happen to also flicker, and I opted for battery operated since I'll be using this while camping and will not have an electric source. I'm also going to be using spray insulation foam. This is very messy. It's best to do this part outside. Speaking of messy, you will also be needing spray paint. You can opt for black or a very dark gray. The first step to this project is, once you know what size platform you want to go with, you cover this in aluminum foil. Now you can tack this down with a bit of glue or some tape on the back, or maybe it stays in place on its own. Afterward, you want to set up where you want the lights to be. Now make sure access to the power source is hanging off of the platform and doesn't get stuck within this. This is all going to be completely covered in foam. So once it's there, it's going to be really hard for me to make any adjustments. This plastic lid is going to serve as a little bit of a protectant, but also going to add a leveling up. It's going to allow me to add a little bit of lift and mound it up like a mound of coals might look like. After arranging the lights how I think they ought to be, I'm going to just make sure everything is secure. I'm going to use a little bit of duct tape, tack this down, and the next step is ready to go. This is the part that gets messy. Make sure you're doing this outside. It might even be a smart idea to change clothes, maybe put on gloves, cover your work area. This foam can go everywhere, especially if you're not used to using it. Create little swirling motions and fill in nooks and crannies. Try to cover anywhere that you see the little lights peeking through. Take your time. Keep paper towels on hand in case you need to have a quick cleanup. Allow time to dry. Once this is dry and it is set, now it's time to spray paint. You can do different levels of thickness, going over very lightly in some areas, going a little bit heavier handed in others. I want this to look as good in the daytime as I do at nighttime when they're going to be on and glowing and looking really cool. Let's see what happens. You know, I think this actually turned out really awesome. I cannot wait to see the final product now. Okay. On to part 2. We're going to attempt to make some kind of stand so that this looks like an actual forge and not just a pile of glowing coals. And then I also have a bellows that we're going to try to attach as well. This is a bellows, and this adds airflow to the coals in a real forge. People also use this at their fireplace if they don't want to blow the embers to get the fire going. I found mine for under $10 at a local thrift store that had a bunch of antiques. So check out your local antique or thrift store. See if you can snag one of these. Otherwise, you might be able to find some of these on Etsy or Amazon, but I definitely like to upcycle what already exists, and you'll probably find a better deal that way too. I doubt they're going to be under $10 online. And then it just looks really cool hanging by my fireplace. Listen, with a set like this, you can get away with having really cool toys as decor at the same time. I'm all about multi-use things. This is how I get away with buying this stuff, because it doubles as decor or useful tools later. I had this old sign that I never hung up, never used, and it was starting to come apart, had a pretty wreath on it, and my cat tore it off. And instead of trying to replace something that I knew I wouldn't really use, I decided that I would scrap the materials and upcycle it for this project, instead of going out to buy pieces of wood that could do the same job. You know, if you already have it, use it. The thing is, it does take some finagling, it does take trial and error, and I actually had a totally different frame from these materials built out. It didn't work, so I scrapped it and documented the size that, so if you do need to go out and buy the exact size that I use, and you don't want to do trial and error and work from materials that you already have around the house, I've done the hard work for you, measured everything out that I used, where I cut it, all the dimensions, and let's get started. The thing that I needed to accomplish is a base to hold the foam that we just put together, but also I needed something to hide the battery pack in. I needed something that if I wanted to set tools on, I could. Basically to frame this in to look like the coals might spill out. I didn't want it to just lay on something flat. I wanted it to look like it's in a box, in something that was filled up with these glowing coals. And now most forges would have an air vent too, so this compartment serves to hold the battery pack, but also serve that purpose of having that airflow blow into the coals. So that's where the billows comes in. Because it's foam, I could literally just stab a hole into the foam big enough for the billows to just slide right in, and then that shelf acted as a support to hold that in place. So all of this is just by kind of figuring it out as I go and documenting the process. But this actually worked better than I originally planned. I went for a 3-leg base so that it would fit well in most terrain, and I decided to make this even more travel friendly by cutting out notches. Now you can pause to read, but these notches were cut to fit the frame. So I made the frame first and then cut the notches to fit snugly on each side. Now obviously you can permanently attach these with screws or nails, whatever materials you prefer, but I wanted something that I could attach really quickly and then detach really quickly and lay flat for travel purposes. And as you can see, sliding in the battery pack, sliding in the foam, and then disassembly is just as easy, if not easier. This was the biggest priority, make this travel friendly. And now you can make it, and when other people see it and admire it, they'll ask you, who made this? And you can say, it was me, and be proud of it. I hope you enjoyed this journey of creating a traveling forge. Remember that you can make this in the way that makes you happy and what fits your needs for your character. I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and I really had no idea exactly what direction I would end up going, but I'm really happy with the end result. This was really fun, and I was incredibly intimidated with this craft at first, but it turned out better than I expected, and I'm really excited to be able to use these at my upcoming LARP events. To portray my character with just a little bit more immersion makes me very, very excited. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe. You can also find me on most social platforms under Medieval Ashley.